Hey everyone, my name's Gabriel Biderman from National Parks at Night. And today we're going to talk about how to not overprocess your Milky Way images. But before we get started, do us a favor and click that subscribe button below. That way you'll be the first to be notified when we put out a new educational video on night photography. Guys, there are millions of images online of the Milky Way. And I would have to say that 80% of them are over processed. Now, what do I mean by that? They're unrealistic. They're full of colors of magentas and pinks and blues that are not seen in the Milky Way, especially with a wide field lens. And they are crunched up. The shadows are crunched. Everything is made to like jump out at you from the image. And to be honest, most of these Milky Ways that we see online are not anything that we've seen with our eyes here on planet Earth. And just like the days of early HDR, when we had the technology where we could bring out so much detail in the information, we would do it. And to our eyes, that would look so unrealistic and false and fake. And this is also happening with the Milky Way. The problem is, not a lot of people have seen the Milky Way. So they are just judging what the Milky Way looks like by these fantastical images of it online. And then when they go out to experience it for the first time, the first time is always an amazing time to experience it, but they're like, wow, how come it isn't as vibrant? How come I'm not seeing those colors and everything else? Well, because you've been lied to with these over-processed Milky Way images. And we here at National Parks at Night, we're here to bring it back to reality and help you process your Milky Way images in a very realistic and natural way. So let's get started. First off, this is the image that we're going to work on today. And guess what, guys? This is unprocessed. It looks really excellent right out of the box. And just to prove, we'll just go down to the reset button and click it, and that any adjustment that would have been made has been negated. So this is the raw file that we're going to start with. First things first, why does this look so good? Well, I'm in a dark sky, so the dark sky is letting those stars really shine. We're seeing more stars than we would in an area that had more light pollution. This is in Lawson National Park. So, and we're at the top of the Cinder Cone volcano. This was shot with a Nikon Z6, the 14-24 2.8 lens. And if we look at our exposure information up here, it was shot at 12,800 ISO, all the way wide open at 14, 2.8 at 15 seconds. Now this is, and let's look at the histogram. This is, I would call this a slightly overexposed histogram, especially for a Milky Way. And this is the kind of histogram that I love to work with. If you're just in a totally dark area and shooting the Milky Way, and there's no other light pollution, your histogram is probably going to just be right over here, crushed on the side. But I shot this, and that's what it was. One stop lower at 6400 ISO. This was kind of really more crushed over, so I went to 12,800 to bring it up, and that gives me more information that I can bring back instead of less information that when I raise that up, I'm inducing noise in the image, okay? So first things first, having a slightly overexposed Milky Way image or a histogram that at least maybe somewhat hits the middle section of your histogram is going to give you more information and going to be easier to process than one that has a histogram that's crushed all the way to the side. So keep an eye on your histogram into the field, bracket it, test ones that are like that and test ones that are a little overexposed. That way it gives you more information to work with. Okay. Now the key to success for Milky Way processing is to think about it in two different ways. There are global adjustments that we can make and there are local adjustments that we can make. And really, especially for Milky Way photography, even though it is one image here that we have, it's made up of two different components, and we have to deal with these two different sections of the image differently. The first one is going to be the sky and all the stars, and we're going to want to treat that a lot different than how we are going to treat the landscape here below. And what's nice about this landscape is we did some light painting here to really bring it up. One of the pitfalls of Milky Way photography is that oftentimes our focus is the Milky Way, our focus is the sky, and we just kind of forget about the landscape, don't do any light painting, don't do anything to it, and just kind of a bland silhouette in the scene. And that kind of just gives nothing for the Milky Way to play off of. Whereas here, we're at top of the cinder cone volcano, and we have the Milky Way just kind of coming up out of this hole in the ground. There's probably a journey to the middle of the earth. And again, we use 3 Lexi lights to bring a lot of detail, a lot of information into that scene, and that makes this right off the bat an image with a lot of information that we can kind of massage out of it. Because we're going to treat these two different ways, I'm going to do minimal global adjustments and really do more local adjustments. Now, the two things that I am going to be thinking about globally are the white balance and the lens corrections. So let's first take a look at the lens corrections. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here. Now, I have as a default to always remove chromatic aberrations when I import my images. And what that does, folks, is that's going to remove any sort of color fringing that's going around the brightest parts of your scene. So that can be seen in a lot of the stars and the planets. And we don't see any, so that's great. It's doing a great job there. Now, the next thing I like to take a look at and consider is enabling the profile correction. And what this is going to do is this is going to say Adobe how they are going to fix the lens. And because we use so many of our wide angle lenses here, there can be a lot of vignetting and there can be a lot of distortion that is going to be fixed. And we can kind of see that here. I just clicked it on and we can see that the difference. So that's with it enabled right here, enabled and not enabled. Now, enabled definitely looks truer and cleaner, but to be honest with you, at least in this phase in my life right now, I am liking it with a little vignette. And that I just love seeing a little bit of a vignette that's kind of true to the lens up at the top corners, and we also see it at the bottom corners. Again, we can see that. Again, open up that information or not. And then again, this is dealer's choice here. Feel free to do it, play around with it. I personally, especially for this image, I'm going to keep my profile corrections off because I like that effect that it is doing right there. Then we're going to go up to our basic section and we'll look at the white balance. Now, I always in the field shoot in Kelvin mode and shoot at a custom white balance, usually somewhere between 3600 and 4000 in dark sky scenarios. A true Milky Way color is 4840. So let's take a look what that is. Wow, that looks pretty yellow, brown. It's often warmer than I want it to be. And I warmed up my foreground a lot, and I like to have my skies be a little bit cooler. Again, this is personal taste, but I wanted to show you what the Milky Way color looks like here. And we can really kind of take a look. What I want to show you is that at that normal temperature, 4840, if we look at the Milky Way, there are not a lot of those colors that we might have seen by the Hubble or by some of these overprocessed images where there are these magentas and pinks and blues coming out from the distant nebula out there. those are only going to be seen at close up, images with a telescope or a telephoto lens. And so, they're not really there. A Milky Way, true color of the Milky Way is milky. It's black and white, folks. So I can see that it's pretty true there on those colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my white balance by just clicking in and then using my arrows. And I'll take a close look first. And now I'm going to just pull back a little bit here. And I want to see what it's doing to the overall scene. And so here's where I started at 3600, which is a little bluer. There's a little green over here. And folks, that's a little air glow that's happening in the sky. Some particles being reflected in there that creates that air glow. It's not an aurora. It's air glow. So I might just go up a little bit. Now that I kind of was reminded what the true Milky Way looks like, I might just bring it up a little bit. And I'm going to kind of stop at 3790 and just, I hate these odd numbers. So I am going to just change that to 38. Whoa, not 33,000. 3,800. And I also, that to me is looking nice. It's a little cool, but not too much. I'm not in my blue phase, but it's still a little too green. So now I'm going to go to my tint and I'm going to add a little magenta. Not, I'm going too much here, guys. That is unrealistic. Okay. Let's bring it back and probably something like, let's see. And again, just scrolling these back and forth to something I'm going to be happy with. And that's, I'm ending up at 12 points of magenta. Okay. So there are my global adjustments. Now I want to separate the images. And the best way, this is kind of an easy shot to separate, right? There are two halves to this. And the gradient tool is our friend here. And so I'm going to click on the gradient. I'm going to hit shift and just drop down a straight, tight gradient. And I'm going to just hover over. And actually, I'm just going to, I want to look at my overlay here. Because I wanted to take all of the sky, but I see that the effect is also dipping into the mountains. So I can take a brush over here and make a quick adjustment. Go to brush and then go down here to erase. Okay. And then here's my brush. And I'll make that a little bit smaller. And then I'll come and just take that mask off of the effect in the mountains. I'm going to just do this quick and a little dirty for your viewing pleasure. Boom. Okay. There we go. All right. Now I can take the mask view off right there and go to work. So whatever, your brushes and gradients are sticky. So the last thing I did here was texture and clarity. If we double click effects, that's going to reset everything. And now I'm making a local adjustment with this gradient. But to be honest, I'm going to make this local adjustment and then I'm going to make another hyper local adjustment. Okay. So the first adjustment is going to be to the whole of the sky. And usually with that, I'm only going to play with dehaze, okay? Because everything else, I am going to take a look because dehaze just does such a nice job, but again, of creating saturation and contrast in the scene. Now, again, we can overdo it. There we are. There's those really false colors coming in, and it's kind of easy to know when you've overdone dehaze because things turn really this wonky blue. So I'm going to bring it back to those truer colors, but I'm still getting a nice punch in the sky, and I'm kind of settling around 20 points of dehaze. Let's see that before and after. Okay. Now the other global adjustments that, these global local adjustments because I'm working just on the sky right here, is I might also look at creating some further contrast by playing with my whites and black sliders. I don't use the contrast slider. It's just a little too heavy-handed, and you can kind of see the effect. It's going the right way, but it kind of just gets too crushed too quickly. So with that, I can kind of control my whites, which with this, it's probably only going to be a little bit, if any, just because we have that light pollution along the horizon. But what's nice about the whites is they kind of bring out the stars really nicely. So I'm going to go 7 points with the whites, and then I'm going to go negative on the black. So I'm going to take those down. And again, here we go, too much. And we can see, yeah, we're losing the Milky Way except for the core itself. And we're not seeing that tonality in the sky. And that's kind of something I'm wanting to build contrast here, folks. But I don't want to lose the tonality in the sky. And I'm settling in on minus 16 points of blacks. And again, let's look at now the whole adjustment we made, starting from nothing to these. And it's looking pretty good right there. And my finishing touches kind of for the Milky Way are to do a Milky Way brush. So I'm going to jump out of the gradient, head over to the brush, and right here you can already see this was my sticky leftover here of texture of 5 and clarity of 10, and that is my starting point for a Milky Way brush. Other thing I should point out is also the flow. So how much you are putting on. This is sort of the opacity that you're laying down. I'm not laying down 100%, but I'm going to lay down half of that because I want to just gently brush this effect in. If I were to, and if I go over it again, it's going to apply it then to 100% because 65 plus the additional. All right, so let's go in, and how I'm going to attack this with the brush is I am going to zoom in, not all the way to 1:1. I'm going to go to 1:2 so I can kind of still see what's going on here. And I'm going to go in here with this effect, and I'm really going to kind of play with the sides of the Milky Way, sort of the tendrils, a lot of that cosmic dust here on the side. I'm going to stay away from the interior of it, because that is already, to be honest, with that dehaze, and it already has a lot of contrast on its own. So think of it as sort of an outline. You're outlining the Milky Way and really picking up some of the finer details here on the edges. Okay, I'm making that effect. Okay, again, not going so much into the middle and the darkness, but I'm going to kind of come into here, pull in this information, come over here, come on over here, and let's just scroll up the rest of the way and work my way down. Now there's sort of less of that effect at the top here as opposed to the galactic core, which is kind of definitely full of those gases and everything like that. But we're getting some good stuff in here. And I go in over here because there are some nice contrasty areas. Over here. Going over up top on the sides here. And a little bit over there. All right, so let's take a look. And again, we can actually hover over to kind of see where we painted. So you can kind of see my wonderful, color in the dots there by hovering over. And we can see the effect. Again, it's pretty subtle, guys. But boom, there it is. It just kind of We're massaging it, guys. We're not taking it with a hammer and clubbing it. All right? Now, we can take these adjustments also, and we can raise the clarity a little bit. You know, maybe we like it a little bit more raised. But again, it's kind of, I don't know. Let's see. I'm kind of, and we have to look at all the areas. But I'm kind of, to be honest with you, settling in on that. And once you settle in on something, albeit, you know, your clarity and your texture and any other adjustments that you want to make in your brush, what you can do is save that brush. We go over here to custom, and we go to save the current presets, so save the current settings as a new preset, and we can call this our Milky Way brush. And this is just going to save you time. Next time you come in, it's saved. You know, Adobe gives you some basic ones that are saved, but now I can always go to my Milky Way brush and just go right to work. So really like where this is. I've done my local sky adjustment, and then I've done my hyper local Milky Way brush, and really kind of brought out a nice amount of detail in the Milky Way. So my final part of this image is to then go back to the gradient, because we said there's two sides to this album here, and the second half is the foreground. We've got some interesting foreground that could use a little bit more massaging to just bring it up a little bit. So, all right, I'm going to hit the shift button and bring up a gradient that's really just going to deal with the foreground. And the foreground, we'll hover over it to kind of see where I am, and that's looking good. I really don't need to go into the mountains, and I'm not dipping into the sky. I'm not overlapping and putting this process on top of the other one. Okay? So with this and the foreground, we're going to, as we can see, we have the gradient. The last thing we did in the gradient was the Milky Way brush. So we're going to take that effect off again by double clicking, because we don't want to apply the Milky Way to the ground. And we're just going to go out of the Milky Way brush, and we're going to just turn it to something simple that's exposure right here and has no effects. And just to double check, we can double click it. Now the effects that I want to go with the foreground, it's pretty well lit, so I'm not really needing to do any sort of adjustments of shadows and whites, but one of the those presence filters really sing here, and especially with rocks, sand, mountains, texture and clarity. Those really are great things to add into the scene and really help with those sort of scenes. Dehaze not so much. Dehaze really more for the sky. And to show you, you know, with dehaze, you can see it's not adding anything positive to the scene. It is just kind of crushing those shadows, adding a little bit of that color that just is not good. Texture is going to be our friend here, and this is, you know, I use texture lightly in the sky, but I'm going to go generally use a little bit more with the landscape. So here we can go in here, and again, if you're unfamiliar with these sliders and what they do, the best thing always to do is to crank them up and see what they do. And we can see that is 100% texture, and we're seeing every grain of sand out there. So that's a little bit too much. And you take away the texture, and you take away any detail whatsoever. So generally, I know in my experience, I'm going to be somewhere between 5 points and maybe up to 40, 50, or even 60 points. So I'm kind of just playing around and seeing, going back and forth. And always a good thing, you know, look what it's doing there. But then you might want to, again, zoom in and get a closer look at that effect. And this is especially important if you're going to be printing. And guys, look at this. It's getting a little too granular here. And boom. There we go. Okay. So I'm liking that at 15%. Let's look at clarity close up first while we're here. Okay, too much. Again, we're kind of inducing noise and getting rid of the tonality. And so I think close up, it's going to look really good there. Let's take a look at it full. And that's looking really good. Awesome. I'm really happy with this. One thing I will say I didn't touch upon, and that was also the detail filter and looking at our noise. Now, the Z6 is pretty amazing at 12,800. You usually don't have to do anything. There is some granularity in the sky, but the Milky Way is granular, folks. We don't. Another kind of common pitfall with processing the Milky Way is that we hate grain. We don't like it. We've been told that it's not good, and so we apply too much noise reduction, and we can kind of see here what it's doing here is posturizing and wiping out the detail in the sky, right? So really not good there. So what I generally am comfortable with putting 10 to 20 points maybe of noise reduction for this camera, but again, cook to your taste. And we can see the 100% view here. There's still some granularity and detail, but it's natural, it's normal, and we're getting rid of any little noise. I don't see any color noise, but I'm going to just crank the color noise to 100 anyways for that Z6. It tends to kind of be in there, but yep. So that's looking good. All right, and let's take a look at the final before and after here, folks. Folks, I hope that I have inspired you to, and even if you take one or two little tips from this and apply it to your own workflow, that's wonderful. That's great. Maybe you make your own Milky Way brush. Maybe you start with my Milky Way brush and then kind of add some things from there. But just remember, let's bring that Milky Way back. Let's bring it to its natural shape, its natural form, its natural colors. And really treat it with the respect and really play it, as a sort of a symphony to the rest of the image in your song. Don't bludgeon it. And that's it, folks. These are my quick tips on how to not overprocess your Milky Way images. I hope that I've inspired you to take at least one or two of these things can help you in your own personal workflow. If you've never seen the Milky Way, or maybe you go and revisit some of your previous Milky Way images and make a virtual copy of what you've done, reset it, and reprocess it again, now with just a gentle massage, and see the difference. See what you like best. There is artistic vision to it all, folks. The Milky Way is definitely a wonderful and surreal thing to witness, but let's just make it a little bit more natural. Give the viewers out there that haven't seen the Milky Way before a true vision of its beauty. Thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate it. Leave your comments and any questions down below in the comment section. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to find out all of our latest educational videos.